Hey everybody, it's Ashley Sturgis here. It is Friday and I'm so excited. It's almost the weekend. Today I am going to be bringing on a very dear friend and special guest, Jennifer Galindo. Jennifer and I actually went to college together for a part of our education credentials. And I am so thrilled to have her on here today. I've titled this How Big Corporations and the Pharmaceutical Industry Impacts Education. And I know nobody better than Jennifer Galindo to come on here and give us her perspective and just chat a little bit about some issues that are going on in our society and maybe even come up with some solutions as we're discussing these. So once she comes on, I'll bring her onto the camera, but while we're waiting for her, this is her first Facebook Live, so we're going to give her a little bit of grace. And oh, there she is. She just popped up. So let's see, I want to introduce her, and I wrote down her credentials because, oh my goodness, they're astonishing. She has 5 different credentials and a very extensive background, professional background. So Jennifer is modest, so I'm just going to go ahead and share with you her background. She has worked as a corporate trainer in the insurance company industry for 8 years. She was 10 years as a secondary general education teacher. She worked 3 years as an elementary administrator, and then 2 years as a mild to moderate special educator, and then also 4 years as a mild, moderate, and moderate to severe special educator. And I too have a background, this is where we met, as a special educator and also a general educator. So we're gonna go ahead and bring her on here. She's also married to an educator and is a mama of 2 beautiful children. Let's see, there she is. And if we could pop her up here. Adding. Sometimes this takes a little while. It says that it's adding. Let's see if it's going to work for us. No matter what, we'll get it. So hang in there. You're not going to want to miss this one. I hope. It still says that it's adding, so maybe it's just taking a little while. So Jennifer, there should be some sort of invitation for you to click accept. And Facebook Lives are changing all the time, so I never know what it's going to look like on your end. They might have even changed it today. So, but it should say, no answer. So let me try again. Let's see. Again, but let's try. Thanks for hanging in there. Oh, there she is.
Hi.
Yay. How are you?
Well, my face looks huge on this thing, but otherwise I'm fine. Hey, I see my husband's watching. Hello, esposo.
Hi. Isn't it so neat how you can see everybody watching? I love it. And I love the support. So thanks, guys. Thanks for being on here.
Well,
Jennifer, I introduced you a little bit. I'm not sure if you heard. I gave everybody your extensive professional background and let them know that you're a mama of 2 beautiful little ones who aren't so little anymore.
that's true.
Time flies, time flies. But is there anything that you want to add about yourself to those watching that I might not have included?
Well, I loved how you said I was modest. I'm sure all my friends who are watching are laughing because I'm
I fibbed a little.
I think it's funny when I start rattling off all the things that I've done in the world of education, and it's really hard not to sound like I'm bragging when I go, well, I did this and I did this and I did this. But one of the things that I think is really important to remember is I worked in business before I was a teacher, and that is really uncommon. And so I think I have kind of a interesting perspective about, hi Scarlett, about how money influences education and how
Yes.
politically involved the quote unquote business of education has become. And I think that's something that a lot of people who work in education don't understand is um, really the evils of the dollar motivating everybody to make the choices that they make. And the choices that we make are not always student centered.
Yes. Are you here?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I thought it looked like you froze for a minute.
No, I'm just striking a
Absolutely.
pose.
And you know what? I was one of those educators who I knew there was a problem. Obviously, it appeared very clearly that education was moving further and further away from being student centered. But I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about corporation and dirty money or anything like that. So I knew there was a problem, but I didn't know why there was a problem.
Well, I
And
think the
so,
other thing that you had going for you is you had a very typical job before you became a teacher. You were a waitress. And so
yes.
a lot of people who go into the business of education work in service industries first, but not as a career. They work as a bartender or as a waitress or a maid or a tutor or something that is customer service oriented and something that allows our personalities to interact with other people, because when it comes down to it, the best teachers are the best relationship creators. And because of that, it's easy for us to build trust. And that's why people ask us questions. Hey, you're a teacher. What do you think about this political candidate? Or what do you think about, should my kid take Adderall? Or it's funny how people think, well, you're a teacher, you must have an opinion. And I think it's our
And we do.
experiences, and we do, especially if you're me.
And we,
No, anyway, I want everybody to understand that is something about you that you bring to the table. You're not just an entrepreneur. You're somebody who has experience dealing with the public and dealing with people and understanding what they want and giving them what they want. You were directly compensated for your ability to keep people happy. And so that is something that is missing in the business of education.
yes, I agree. Absolutely. And that is my favorite part of the business that I am in, is that it is so people oriented and still very much, it's important to me to be in a servitude career, and I've found that here where I'm able to reach a broader scale, and still focus on education among other things that are going on in society that I want to focus on, because it all connects and it all relates. And so that's near and dear to my heart, and thank you so much for edifying me. It's really sweet of you. But let's jump right in, because I have some questions and I can't wait to share your perspective with my network, with your network, and really dive into these questions. So, is that okay?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So, I usually don't write down my questions, but I did this time because I don't want to leave anything out. So, it's come to my attention that public universities actually have been, for the last 40 years, financially supporting research. And not only have they been financially supporting research, but it's not been transparent. So, in other words, the public, they haven't had to disclose exactly how they're involved in the research to the public. And so, um, companies like Coke Industries, PepsiCo, and Mars have been influencing education at the public university level, which we know, or could argue, trickles down into elementary ed, and the rest of society, because education, or society, is held together by education. And so, an example that I read recently about is in the 1970s, scientists at Harvard were given large amounts of money to actually suppress studies showing that that sugar actually leads to heart disease and diabetes. And so I'd love for you to share your perspective on how the suppression of that research that we know aided in these companies' propaganda influenced the generation of that time. So we'll start there and then we'll kind of move into the present, if that's okay.
Well, it'll only take 2 weeks to answer that question, but we're going to try to keep it as short as possible. One of the benefits of working in the education and insurance industries for 3 decades is you really learn when people are trying to skew facts with data. In the insurance industry, one of the things that drives insurance rates is referred to as actuarial data. And what that is a fancy way of saying using mathematical formulas to assess and charge for risk. And that's what companies do when they want to sell a product. They assess and evaluate their risk. Well, you would think to yourself, what's the risk in public education, or what's the risk in telling the truth about research that happens? So I want to split that question into 3 parts, if that's okay. And the first thing I want to address is it's absolutely true that people who are selling a product, whether it be refined sugar or whether it be reading intervention materials, they deliberately go out and search out people who are working on research in a related industry. And like the Harvard studies that were done on the influence of sugar and nutrition to shape the government's food pyramid in the late 60s, early 70s, the same thing is true with people who jump into something political in the world of education. So let me give an example. 20 years ago, when I started teaching public school, it was the beginning of No Child Left Behind, and it was the beginning of high stakes testing. And just in California alone, the very first year that we adopted state testing, the government spent $45 million on assessment, which maybe doesn't sound like a huge amount of money for a state the size of California. But if you think of the fact that could have hired 2,000 teachers as an example, it makes you wonder, why are we putting so much stake in these tests? So if you look at that particular set of examinations, they were created by Stanford, one of the most respected universities and one of the most influential private universities. People always look at them as being certainly one of the top 5 universities in the country. And because they're privately funded, they can do whatever research they want. They don't have to get permission from Congress or get the lobbyists behind them. All they need are somebody to pay for their research samples. And so one of the things that happens is textbook companies want to compete with each other, and textbook companies get hundreds of thousands of dollars for each one of the 22,000 school districts that are in California. So if you just look at the California market alone, there's a big reason, there's a lot of dollars behind getting research to support your point of view. And so I see huge connections between the holistic well-being and health and education of every child and the connection that it has to big business, money making, and lies.
Yes, absolutely. And you froze a little bit. Are you here?
I'm still here.
I think there might. Okay, I think there might be a delay. We're going to continue because it does this sometimes. So, I love your perspective, and I understand we can talk for days on just that question alone, but I do want to kind of transition us into present education and talk about, last night we were speaking about the vending machines at your children's school. And some people might, think of a vending machine at a school as, a good thing and even a luxury possibly, especially the kids, right? So, but I would love to hear your perspective on this, what seems to be a small example of how big corporations are sticking their hands, so to speak, in education, which translates to all parts of our society. And so, what is your perspective on these vending machines at your children's school? And how do you think that relates to big corporations having very much so an influence in education and the rest of society?
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because being a mom and being someone who believes strongly in the power of taking care of your health, not through drugs, but by good nutrition, good sleep, good healthy mental habits, and taking care of your whole person, and being someone who has been identified as having severe food allergies to not natural substances, but to artificial dyes and colors, it's very hard for me not to look at this as a personal issue. But one of the things that I want to start with is vending machines have been on high school campuses since they were invented. And even when I was in high school a million years ago, we had vending machines on our campus. However, the vending machines on our campus, for a quarter, you could buy a fresh Valencia orange or an ice cold Washington apple. You couldn't buy red hot flaming Cheetos and Mountain Dew and things that weren't food. So vending machines were very convenient. But another thing that was true even 35 years ago when I was in high school was there were ladies in the kitchen whipping up the spaghetti that they were slopping on the plates and frying the chicken and making the French fries. And now everything comes out of a package in the school cafeteria. So that's kind of a side note to the vending machine issue that I want to discuss. But I work at a top-notch high school in Chino Hills, California. We are one of the highest performing schools in San Bernardino County, the largest county in the country. And one of the things that I can tell you is the Frito-Lay Corporation has managed to work their way into the public domain by placing not one but two vending machines right next to the student restrooms on my campus. And so Ashley and I were talking about how it's become a common practice for the students to say, "May I use the restroom?" and have the teacher say, "Sure, go ahead." And the kids are coming back with pockets full of snacks they bought from the vending machine. Whether they used the restroom or not, they were on their way to load up with sugar and salt and trans fat or whatever packaged goods that they could find. And I remember when I was an assistant principal 10 years ago, federal legislation passing that prohibited the sale of those items on elementary school campuses. So it was a surprise for me to all of a sudden see Cheetos and Fritos and Doritos and Mountain Dew and Pepsi show up in on my campus, and it was being sold throughout the day. And so I wanted to throw that out there, that I see that as being a very interesting change. There were times when a celery stick from my district. And the reason for that is because the Frito-Lay Corporation provides the machines for free. They do all the maintenance on them. And the district gives the corporation access to have their people drive onto the locked campus and refill those machines twice a day during instructional time. So it's really a big issue. The way that we feed our children and the way that we provide for their physical being has a direct influence on the way that they perform in school. And we learn that when we study for our master's degrees and for our teaching credentials, that children are really the same as pies. Their physical, intellectual, emotional, and social needs are the ones that are the influential factors that sometimes we can and cannot control. And so we can definitely control the physical factors of what we provide for them to eat and drink when they're at school. And that has a direct impact on their ability to pay attention, stay awake, and perform in the classroom.
Absolutely. And we also know that that is when habits occur too. So most likely children who grow up being accustomed to eating all of this sugar and depending on that and making it a habit are going to continue that throughout their lives. And we also know that sugar does lead to heart disease, sugar does lead to diabetes, and that is a gain in the pharmaceutical industry and big corporations because, of course, that's going to increase pharmaceutical distribution. And so, a vending machine on a school campus, although it may seem like a luxury and a small example of how big business and corporations have their hand in every part of society, it actually leads to much bigger issues that we need to address. Um, and so, you know, it looks like we might be losing connection. I hope everybody's still here. I don't see any thumbs up or anything, so I'm not quite sure if you guys can hear me, but I'm going to start to close out just in case. And Jennifer, if you can still hear me, I'd love to hear um, your, I guess, suggestions and perspective on how our community, our parents and grandparents, and anybody involved in the community and who care about our future can get involved to make a difference, whether it's a small difference or a large difference, in how education and making education student led again, or if ever, and so that our society can really flourish in the future, because it is necessary to look to the future, understand what's going on now in the present and what has gone on for many, many years, and then be able to make changes in any way that we can so that we can better the future of our children. And so, Jennifer, how could, in your opinion, how could people watching and people who are going to watch this get involved to make even the smallest change in the right direction?
Well, I love that question because I think the most important thing for people to remember is the very first school a child has are the schools within their families and within their communities. And so what's important to us and the things we want our children to know and learn and keep with them throughout their lives really are not just that vertical angles are congruent and other geometric theorems. We want them to be safe, happy, healthy, and successful human beings, whatever career choices they make, whatever life choices they make. We want them to be ready. And that's something that we say to our children. Why do I have to eat my broccoli? Well, because you're building the skeleton you're going to have inside all your life. And there are lots of ways to get calcium. Broccoli is one of them, just as a small example. The other thing that I think is really important to remember is everybody who lives in our society wields a lot of power in the ballot box. Just this week, we had some political activism coming from a friend and educator of mine. Her name's Julia Peacock. She was selected to be one of the top two performers in the primary election. And just 4 years ago, she was a teacher with me. And she disagreed with the local control funding formula that was being presented and the way that our district was handling it. And it was her activism to educate parents and other people with, hey, this is how your money is getting spent, and you do have a voice, and you need to stand up and object, because otherwise they just do whatever the lobbyists ask be done. And so looking at her political success and her gateway into that new career for herself came from, hey, what can I, as just one teacher, as just one person, as just one community member, do? And that's something that everybody needs to remember. Your local school boards control hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis. They service everything they do because a child came to school. And so we need to make demands as parents and teachers and community members to make sure that the money is being spent in a way that puts the students and their needs first, not adult comfort, not political motivations, not big business, but what is going to benefit each and every one of these little people as they grow and learn and become our future.
Exactly. And I want to touch on one last thing. Um, before we go, for those of you who are watching, Jennifer has so graciously agreed to come on once a week and kind of dive into these issues a little bit further, because we could go on forever and ever and ever, and we don't want to keep this too long. So if you have anything that you'd like us to bring up, drop it in the comments. We'll also be dropping some petitions that you can sign and some articles that have research that we're basing this all off of. These aren't just our opinions. So we'll be including those into the comments as well. And Jennifer, if there's not anything else that you'd like to add to this interview today for this time, let's go ahead and close out, and then we'll be back next week. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. I'm so thankful for the opportunity and feel very honored. And it's exciting for me to see my friends popping up and watching. I want to say hi to everybody around the country. And I invite you to come back and join our conversation again.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate you, and I hope to see you while you're off this summer.
You bet.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.